it was probably 2 years after my brother Danny died. When you connected with my brother, it really soothed my grief. Like, I knew he was in a better spot, and I knew that you were talking directly to him. There was just no doubt in my mind because of all the different, like, nobody could have known about pigs. My brothers, I had 4 older brothers, and when my brothers were kids, they used to go, kidding around with each other, "You're nothing but a pig." They used to say that to each other in this joking manner. And my mother would get crazy, "Don't you call your brother a pig, blah, blah." And they would joke and say, "You're nothing but a pig." Just like that, like exactly the way you exaggerated the word and everything.
I really believe she visited him.
He just wants you to know he knows how much you loved him.
And everybody in the room, their jaw just
knowing
dropped.
exactly what someone needs to hear.
That she called
you don't
me
mind
when
if I
nobody
keep my
really
shoes off?
It was incredible.
And then I was like, "Oh my God."
There's more after this life. This is Ripple Road.
Hello, I'm Scott, and welcome to my podcast. This is episode 1 of a series that we'll be diving into and exploring myself, I guess you'd say. Mediumship, man. I am a psychic medium, and that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the reason why I'm always saying that, I don't want to just accept the label that's put on me, is because it's been frustrating for me over the years, trying to figure out what the heck is going on with me. From an early age, from the teen years, even now as a full-time medium, there's just really frustrating things that happen that I want answers for. Why wouldn't you, You're always wanting to figure out yourself and the world and life and what's it all mean, and I'm no different, except that I had these crazy experiences happen to me that when they happen to you, you kind of want to know what's going on, right? So I started looking into books. I started going to meditation groups, talking to other mediums, other psychics. And what I found over the years is, besides being like the perpetual student, is that I can't quite find the right teachers, There's always something lacking. It's like one teacher will have this one component and be able to tell me about this one thing. I'll be like, yeah. What about this? And then it falls short.
She had, and you took on, it was a female voice, and you took on this accent, and you could see kind of your soul be pushed aside, and this person, you channeled them through, and it was intense to watch. And I remember you pulling yourself out of it, and, you were a little shaken up. It was intense. And then you moved on, and it was really cool.
We're pretty much at a juvenile stage of understanding personality, spirituality, how this energy within us and awareness continues after death, how it interacts with the physical world, this kind of matrix of levels of your being. We really don't understand how these things all interact with each other, and I've certainly tried to explore it just to help explain the experiences that I've had that were forced on me. Look, I didn't look into becoming a medium, right? I never wanted to do this. It happened to me, and to this day, I'm still grappling with it, But there is one thing I can tell you, I'll share with you, is that through all these years of trying to figure myself out and explore this, I've absorbed a lot of information. So they say if you don't find the teacher, maybe it's time to be that teacher. Maybe it's time to step it up. Maybe I have enough information now that it might be useful to other people. So take this ride with me as I go back through my past and my history and talk about the experiences that have shaped who I am. You'll find that as a medium, I'm kind of a schmoozy therapeutic type, I'm not really the paranormal, ghost hunting, Ouija board, witchcraft type. And you'll come to understand exactly why that is. Each episode is going to be another little segment of my life, coupled with some just philosophical musings about the spiritual world, mediumship in general, how I do readings and what it feels like to me to do readings. And maybe you can get a little insight too onto the nature of your reality. Maybe you get a little inspiration to be more authentic yourself, and we can go on this ride together. So I thank you for joining me on this.
I mean, that's how I tell people. Like, there was a time where the first reading I had with Scott, like, he plucked a word, a phrase, like out of my mind that had been like rotating in my head and just like put it back. You like gave it back to me. You said it back to me and I was like, how would you even know? You shared with me this thought that I was living in my mind that I had not verbally shared out loud with anybody. Like, you told me something that I thought about consistently in regards to this past relationship, that I was like, how in the world could you know pretty much down to the word what I was thinking? So that was like the moment where I was like, Scott is really touching, like, some part of him can like access beyond the veil, beyond the flesh, beyond like all of that. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's a little hard to describe to people who haven't seen what I do before. The reason I say this is because just saying I'm a psychic medium, that might mean something to some people. And what I've found is, I don't know, I'm just a bird of a different feather. I wish I wasn't. I'm not saying that because I feel like I'm some unique special thing. I'd rather actually find more mediums that work the way that I do so I could understand what the heck is going on with me. A little background on myself, these things started when I was younger. And it was very hard to describe what was happening, and there's not a lot of people to talk to. It's natural to kind of have these questions, but doubly so if you have really nutty experiences like I had. You really want to get to the root of it and figure out what's going on and how it works. And for many years when I had the nightmares as a child, I just wanted to make it stop, so it was kind of imperative to figure out what was going on just to get a good night's sleep. Even as a full-time medium, a lot of times my readings don't work out, and I try to sit down and meditate and clear my head and connect for the people that have hired me, and it doesn't come through, and I don't know why, and that's really frustrating for me. Financially, it's not a great business model as I have to hand back people's money. I mean, I guess one thing is it keeps me honest, It has to be there. I can't make the stuff up. It has to flow through me. And that brings me to the point that I'm not quite a clairvoyant psychic. I don't get these visions or hear these voices. Well, what is it then? It's like some people would say it's this clairsentience. It's the clear feeling or clear knowing, even clear cognizance, right? There are all these labels and words. I don't know if any of them describe me, to tell you the truth. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I've learned a lot about how my ability works and what's going on in my brain when I'm doing readings. I could tell you about how it feels. I'm kind of fusing with the person that I'm reading for. I can feel what they're feeling, and I can reflect their true selves back to them. And it would be really hard for me to like bullshit somebody and try to take advantage of them when I'm in that state of mind. That doesn't feel good. It's just inviting my stomach to drop. What ends up happening is if I'm not connecting with somebody, instead of trying to push it, I'm nervously honest. I tell people, like, this isn't working. I know we all want it to. I certainly want it to.
I don't know if you find this true, but I feel like if somebody going into it that doesn't have an open mind and isn't ready to hear like any information, maybe that's why.
There was one time, and this was probably like 3 or 4 readings in, and I had my mother and a family friend there. Well, we'll call her an acquaintance. And the acquaintance was trying to bombard like the whole reading. And it was like, oh, that's for me. Oh, that's for me. I know somebody named Bob. And she was kind of messing up the vibe again. But for some reason, she's like, all right, I have to go. So she left the reading early. And then as soon as that woman walked out the door of my house, everything turned around.
And we might as well start where it always starts, with the very beginning, right? Birth. I was born June 3rd, 1975. Why is that date important? Because my mother was born on June 3rd. It made the newspapers even. As the story goes, this is a little quirky. I was due to be born June 2nd at night, and I guess the attending nurses figured out that her birthday was the next day, so they just didn't encourage the pushing. They didn't encourage the baby to come out, and I was born 12/15, June 3rd. I think spiritually, that was an agreement that our souls had. Like, I wanted into the physical earth. Where can I find an entrance? Here's one. My mother gives birth to me, and that's kind of the end of the story, I would say. She jets out, She cuts out and kind of abandons us when I was a baby. She came around, once in a while, tried to get us on the weekends, and she was still around, but it's awfully strange in the 70s to have a single dad. It's strange for divorce, wasn't even that common, but to have the kids stay with their dad was supremely uncommon. So I used to tell the story that my mom left my dad to pursue her career as a disco singer, because that sounds fun, right? And there's a little bit of truth in that. My mom actually was a disco singer. She had an album, she had radio play, and one of the earliest memories I have is me and my sister at this kind of disco lounge kind of club, and we actually got to see her perform, and she called to us, "My children are in the audience tonight," we waved and got up, and I remember this stuff, So I got these little memories of my mom here and there. If you want to take a listen to one of her disco songs, here you go. This one I found, it's not great quality, but give you an idea of the type of stuff my mom was into at the time.
Come on and ride a wild horse, saddle up down to the source. You can tame me, you can claim me, I'll be yours. Oh, giddy up boy, come on, ride me. Woo, giddy up boy, come on, ride me.
Ain't no denying what that song is about, right? She did another one called "Gonna Rock You to Your Socks, from the bottoms to the tops, till your love snaps and pops. Rock you to your socks." And I think, hey, Mom, what was that song about? We used to love teasing her and asking her about this. And I remember once I was like, 11 or 12 years old, and I asked her, and she said, "Oh, that song's about oral sex." I'm like, "Mom." She's like, "Till your love snaps and pops." I'm like, "Mother, what?" So, good times had by all. My mom, who knows the answers to this, but she left us when I was a baby, less than a year old, My dad would talk about that first Christmas. So it goes like, my dad wanted her to stick around for the Christmas morning, at least celebrate the family Christmas together before you leave. But the truth is, from what I understand, she was gone kind of before that ever happened. And the reason I know this is because my cousin Sue, who's a little bit older, right? She ended up babysitting for that first year. Like, I was just an infant. And that would have been that summer. And she kind of moved in with my dad there at the house that we had. And I was just talking to her recently about this, and I was surprised to hear. I thought my mom left, around Christmas, as my dad says it, but she was gone before that because my cousin was babysitting, and she had a conversation with my dad about, I have one more year of high school, and it's starting up in September. I can't stay here. And apparently, according to the family stories, I don't have any memory of this, but me and my sister were pawned off on my Aunt Joan, who had a little farm, and she had 8 kids of her own. And we spent some time there. So my early childhood, infancy, when they say that you develop emotional bonds and connections, I didn't have an emotional bond to my mother. And my dad, being who he is, bless his heart, but he's not a lovey-dovey type, man. I guess a lot of guys of that generation kind of feel that way, but we were passed around, my sister and I, to various family members in the beginning there. I have another cousin that tells a story about how she said, as a baby, "You were a weird kid. You didn't really respond. We thought something was wrong with you." I'm like, really? That's a horrible thing to say. But I guess when we went to my Aunt Joan's early on there, less than a year old or a couple years old, there were other kids running around. She had 8 kids. What ended up happening is my dad's mom, my grandmom, started stepping in to help out. And, I had a lot of guy cousins that were a little bit older than me, and they were all kind of rougher. fight each other, punch each other, kind of more physical types. And my grandmother sheltered me from a lot of that, I had a strange relationship with male role models from a very early age. Even to this day, I don't like toxic masculinity. I just cringe at it, man. And I guess it goes back to like my older cousins picking me up and throwing me in the deep end of the pool for a laugh, and I couldn't swim, and I thought I was going to drown, and I was terrified and petrified. And any time I'd be left alone with them, they were always trying to pick on me or laugh at me. You know the old show Fantasy Island? De plane, boss. Well, if you don't know, anyway, it was this island where the plane would come in, and they had this little short guy, God, was it Tattoo, I think, right? And he would signal out the plane's coming. Well, apparently, as a little kid, I had the really dark black hair, and I had these just black eyes, man. My pupils are very dark brown, but at the time, it was like these little black eyes and black hair. And even once I remember in the summers when I was staying with my cousin Kate, and I used to get really tan, and somebody walked up there and they're like, "Who's that little Puerto Rican kid you're hanging out with there?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Scotty." So I definitely had a look to me, My cousins used to make me do the Fantasy Island thing, and I'd be like, "Deplane, boss, deplane," and they would just crack up in hysterics. So I was always there for the entertainment. I only got attention when I was being the showman, but I didn't understand at the time that they were kind of making fun of me, I guess. But I used to try to get attention that way, by what I can do, by putting on the show,
It was one of your longest shows. It had to have been, I don't think we ended up getting out of there till like 10:30, 10:45 at night. But you were on fire. And then, you were like, "Okay, I know we've been going a long time, and if anybody wants to leave, go ahead, I won't be offended," type of thing. And then that's when we both said to each other, "I think I want to stay around, and I think there's still something that we need to hear." And then that's when she got a lot of information about her mom who had passed away. And I'm like, "All right, now I'm addicted. I'm hooked. This guy is cool, and I need to see him every single time he has a show."
Explains a lot about me, too, that you have to be somebody to get loved, that you have to do things. I had a lot of insecurities growing up where it was like, what's your authentic self? My authentic self was when I was alone, when I wasn't interacting with anybody else. What are these masks that we have to wear, right? I get really deep into this stuff about the nature of reality based on who you are in that moment. Is reality the same to you today as it is tomorrow? Because you're different. What masks are you wearing? How do you talk to other people? Are you the same person you talk to when you're talking to your cousin that you're talking to your friend? Or these things are they really weigh on my mind sometimes about what continues when we die. What version of you is there? Are there all these different layers? What if you return to an infinite soul, Are you being the showman then for affection? Are you being the joker? Are you being the caring individual or the talented artist or the intellectual smart school student? Or are these qualities that you get in life going to continue after death? And here's where it gets weird. I think, this is my theory from doing all these readings over the years, that just in order to be here in the physical world, you need a personality. You actually can't be in this physical world unless you have a personality. So anything that takes you out of that identity is putting you in touch with the eternal. That's why when you meditate and you close your eyes and you go internal, you're leaving behind your personality. In that moment, you're fusing with the eternal. That's what it's going to feel like when you die, because that's where you came from. That's the place you came from, right? Before you were born, were you the person that your childhood made you? You know what I mean? All these childhood experiences, you didn't choose to be thrown in the deep end of the pool and therefore be afraid of toxic masculinity. That was something that happened to you, It forms your personality, but before that, who are you? Who were you before you were even born? Because that's the eternal awareness that will continue after death. So when you physically die, how easy is it for you to unravel all those layers of identity, all those things that you identify with? You say, "I am this way." You have to uncouple your awareness from all of those different layers, different attributes, different identities in order to fuse with the eternal. And that's the journey that everyone is on once they physically die. For some, it's very easy, right? Are you comfortable with yourself? Are you comfortable sitting with yourself? Do you feel okay to just go within and relax and be at peace? Then you're going to have an easy time dying. That's how it goes. For people who are afraid to look at themselves, right? You've got guilt issues. You've got anger issues. Maybe it's you don't really feel like if you knew who you really were, you'd be worthy of love. So you have to put on these roles. You have to prove to others your worth, right? A lot of people have this personality aspect to them. And what happens if you no longer have the opportunity to prove your worth? Then you're just not worthy. Then you're just not a worthy person. You're going to have to deal with that when you physically die and your consciousness continues. Because what happens is all those layers of your consciousness, the way that you think, the way that your childhood and teen years and adulthood have formed your personality, it's like a little shell. When you die physically, the shell continues, but you can exit that shell. You can go into a deeper state of infinite awareness. So when I'm doing readings and I'm channeling those in spirit, I can either contact that infinite awareness and then it channels through me and my voice changes and it's all this love and high up vibrational wisdom, or you're going to want to have some familiarity with the loved one that you lost, right? You don't want to have them come through as this angelic infinite awareness. You want to know that it's really them, that it's valid. So they have to, from the spirit world, re-enter the shell of their worldly identity and come through me, the vehicle, the conduit that's going to produce the messages for you. So there's this harmonic kind of thing happening vibrationally with what dimension they're coming through. It's like I'm leaving the physical world a little bit, but I have to have a toehold because I have to have that language center of my brain still operating, still able to talk to you in the physical world, but I have to half go out of the physical world, and I'm meeting those in spirit halfway as they go from the eternal back into their shell of consciousness and identity. And so what you're going to get is people coming through who all of a sudden are reminded about like, man, it used to be good to smoke cigarettes. I remember that. And people ask me, like, do they really smoke cigarettes in the afterlife? I'm like, well, no. But coming through me reminds them of their earthly self, you know? That's why, for me as a medium, I'm different than other clairvoyants that can tell you things about your very recently departed loved one. Maybe they've only been gone a month and they can do that reading for you. For me, I get tripped up if it's too soon because the person in spirit going back into their conscious vehicle too soon before they've familiarized themselves as this infinite identity, this infinite awareness, it trips them back up and they're recalling maybe the physical illness that ended up, making them die, the discomfort, they're bringing back up all that stuff and it's very distasteful to them and it doesn't leave me feeling good. So the whole thing falls apart. Would they say, oh, they're not in the light yet? I'm like, no, they're in the light. It's just too soon to re-enter all that familiar earthly identity that would stir back up all the not necessarily the nicest feelings, you know. You are this infinite seed of awareness. It's in you right now. It was there before you were born, and it will continue once you die.
And you had described it as it was too soon. And the analogy you gave was like when, let's say you moved a dog cross country, and the first time you open that door, the dog's going to want to run out, but you're a little afraid that he's not going to find his way home. And that's kind of where it was with Brandon, that they really didn't want him to come through yet. So, like Brandon, I've had 3, like, what I consider definite visitation dreams. And it's just, I always relate it to a migraine. If you have to ask, you haven't had one, because it's just like, they're that profound. My routine when I go to bed is to lay on my back, and I fold my hands over my chest. And I just have this where I close my eyes and I try and see him on the back of my eyelids. I don't know if that sounds good, like shadows come through. And I just always want to be able to visualize his face and a heartbeat. And I do that. And then I start like asking for him to come to me in a dream or thing. And it's not every night now, but like in the beginning it was all the time. And he stood in front of me and you said, and then Brandon came through and he said, he comes to you in your dreams. And I'm like, yeah, he does. And the next thing you did was just like, is you took your hands and you crossed them up over your heart. The exact pose that I take when I sleep.
My dad's mom, my grandmom, she became like a mother figure for me. She kind of babied me. I guess she saw the lost sheep in my eyes. I don't know what happened, but she took to me, and I took to her. So she would come and stay with us, on the weekends in our house there, just me and my sister and my dad, and eventually moved in with us. And I don't remember this, but I think my sister remembers that, when my mom would come around once in a while still, and he'd get into these kind of violent, angry outbursts with her, and my sister would cry, and I would just apparently kind of sit there and not really react much, But I guess I have those memories, though, of my dad being kind of temperamental, I guess is the word, prone to anger issues, and that kind of rubbed off. I remember him yelling at his mother, my grandmother, who I adored, and he would yell at her and just take out things. It's a tough situation, you know what I mean? But that was my early childhood, so I think it kind of shaped a lot of this lonerism in me, this kind of just setting off in my room, playing with Legos, and that was it. I could spend hours alone because nobody was really coming to check in on me. There wasn't a lot of emotional presence or interaction in my infancy and toddler years, so I was left to my own imagination. And so my grandma would watch us, and eventually my sister went off to, kindergarten. She's 2 years older than me, so I stayed at home, and my dad was working, and I loved my big wheel. And I remember this. And people in my family would say, "This never happened." And I would say, "Absolutely, I remember doing this." I got on my big wheel outside, and I rode it all the way around the block. Now, the block that we were living on was a big block. It actually, the houses on that block, the backyards backed up onto this wooded area. So it was one of the larger blocks. And I remember going all the way around the block and coming home and going in. And my grandma, she was older. She didn't even know it. She just thought I was in the yard playing. So from a very early age, I had this kind of inquisitive, nomadic spirit that I just wanted to be left alone and go journey and explore, It kind of highlights a thing about myself that I'm constantly exploring.
You also told me that I have a spirit guide that has been in spirit so long that she's more like a shapeshifter, and she's been with me for a very long time, and that she actually pops in and out. She's not always with me. She'll pop in and hang out with me for a while and go off and do whatever else she wants to go do.
I've heard it said that these early infancy years can shape who you are emotionally well into adulthood. My grandmother was one of those people with hard to find photographs of her smiling. There's a few of them out there, but she was kind of a very, serious scowl to her face, but she cared. It's just that she didn't show her emotions. She kind of left those bottled up for, I guess, when we sat alone. I remember sitting there with her as a baby, and I'm trying to console her because she's crying, and she's telling me nobody loves me, and I'm like, "Grandma, I love you." And this is the sadness that I got to experience. And it was only years later as an adult when I talked to other people in the family about it. They were shocked to hear it, because she didn't really show that to anybody. But I certainly saw it. And I kind of feel like even to this day, I really have a soft spot for people that are going through a lot. I feel like I want to reach out and help them, It's kind of part of that therapeutic nature with me. It really defined a cornerstone of my personality that comes through in my mediumship, that I sincerely want the readings to help the people that I'm reading for. It's not one of these you get what you get, and it's this transactional thing, pay me for my time. I have to really feel like I'm engaging with you. And that's why I do this work.
The way that I work, I tend to I feel like I'm in a rush, like I'm wasting time and I'm in a rush and I'm in the wrong place. Especially with, my anxiety and stuff, I think that was the main reason that I started and was so interested in it, because I wanted some form of an answer. And I drove to Phoenix, Arizona, and you called me out of the blue and you basically told me, like, I felt really weird about leaving. I felt like I'm leaving this behind if I leave, and I felt rushed and like I should stay, but I wasn't comfortable staying. And you called me and you just said, you know, you're on the right track. Everything, it's fine. Everything's good. And you told me a lot of oddly specific things about people I would meet. You said you'll know you're around the right people when they don't wear Vans. They wear different shoes, and they're like, they kind of clown you for wearing Vans. Like, why do you wear Vans? Like, and I'm like, that's never going to happen because everyone wears Vans. The people that you're hanging out with when you moved I hadn't even moved. I had not even gone to LA yet. I went out there, and this group of people, I remember specifically my friend Jason, he was like, man, all you wear is Vans. Like, you gotta switch it up. You gotta wear some Adidas. You gotta wear this. And I had a moment where I was like I just felt it in my gut. I was like, oh, it's really weird that they actually physically said out loud that I was, you know, a weirdo for wearing Vans and I should switch up my shoe game.
One of the people that my dad would pawn us off to, that's a horrible thing to say, but it sure felt like it, right? We stayed with a lot of different people. Was my cousin Kate, you know, and she lived at the beach, resort town, you know. She was a hotel manager, and she had this little apartment unit that the hotel had. It was a big, you know, 9-story hotel. Deep inside the hotel where the maids would do the laundry and everything, no windows or anything. It was just this little tiny bedroom apartment in there. And me and my sister would stay with my cousin Kate and her boyfriend Ed. And those were great times. Those summers were fantastic. Going to the beach, the boardwalk, the amusement rides, the arcades. You know, Ed had a stake in an arcade there, so I'd hang out with him, and he'd show me how the arcade machines work and give me free credits on it. We'd go home after the summers, and there was one time, I think it was like first grade, one of the teachers had us do assignments where, you know, explain your summer. And I wrote how we got free amusement rides, you know, because the owner of the hotel that Kate worked at was also the manager of one of the amusement parks. So we would just go get free wristbands and ride all day. And the teacher said, I think your son is fibbing, you know, to my dad. She was concerned. He really embellished about how he got all this free stuff and went on the rides anytime he wanted to. And he'd wake up in the mornings and go up to the hotel swimming pool and have Shirley Temples every day. And my dad goes, yeah, that's all true. Ain't no lies in that. That's what happened, you know. But anyway, part of the arcade thing is they'd have those claw machines, you know, and you'd get little stuffed animals out of it. So I had so many stuffed animals by the end of the summer. And I would line them all up on the bed. And they were so important to me. I named them all. Everyone had names, and there was this one big orange cat I named Fat Cat. And then there was a little bear I called Gregory. And there was a little black parrot, like a macaw or something, and I called him Blackie. Not the best name, Blackie. You know, I'm in first grade. I didn't know. Funny enough, I had taken them to do a puppet show at school one time, and I had these little stuffed animals, and they had a little cardboard box you'd hang behind and do a little puppet show. And my name's Blackie, you know. And my teacher goes, Blackie, I think it's time we give Blackie another name. I was like, all right. But, you know, this is the thing with the imagination is I really took to these stuffed animals and I would line them up around me every night. You know, it was like they were my protectors. At the time, it's like that's what a kid does, right? When people ask me, you know, when did you know you were a medium? Well, I mean, that's a little weird that I needed protection every night before I went to sleep. But is it that weird? I mean, that's what all kids do, right? I had to tuck my feet under the covers, and then I have to have the blankets tucked up all the way up under my neck and my chin, and you have to like really tuck it down so no air could get in, right? And I had to sleep that way because if there was any pocket of air, they could get me. I was absolutely friggin' convinced that if there was a little pocket of air, they would get me. And I was terrified. Something would come out of that interdimensional closet. You know, Gregory and Blackie and Fat Cat, they all had to protect me, you know. I had to line up all these stuffed animals around me, my whole body. And there was this little window, you know, at the back of the bedroom. This house was small. The bedroom was small. That back window looked back on this big wooded area that was fenced off. And my sister and I would, sometimes explore back there. It was all bushes and shrubs and trees, and you could go back into the woods, and there were gravestones back there. And, you wouldn't believe it, kids. We found gravestones, and we would say, it's an Indian burial ground, That's what it is. And rumors all around the town, kids would all talk about that wooded area and those Indian burial ground. Well, the thing is, those gravestones, those markers were so old, hundreds of years old, that all the writing had been worn off of them over, centuries, right? I don't know how long they've been back there, but it was so spooky. And I knew they were back there. And my bedroom window looked out onto those woods with those gravestones. And I was so convinced as a young child, 10, 11 years old, that there's spirits and ghosts and monsters and all kinds of things in those woods that are going to come through the window and they're going to come and get me, Again, is that really abnormal for a child? I don't know. I think children have a very active imagination, and maybe there's something real in that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, one of the kids wants to change their bedroom or move their bed to a different place or change the way they're sleeping. I would do that.
Okay. I can definitely see my little one. He just came in the room right now, so that's probably why you're channeling that.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and make a day of it if you want to move things around or change the bedspread or something. I would say go for it.
He definitely.
Cool.
A few months ago, he had seen something scary, so he has been fearful in the evening and especially at bedtime. So
do it. Change it all up. Even if you just I'm going to move the bed a foot over this way and move this nightstand over here. Just move stuff around and make it look a little bit different and see if that does the trick. I think it will.
Okay, because he will wake me up in the middle of the night and say, can you leave your door wide open? I said, yes, you can leave my door wide open and yours too. So, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
See, I'm helping you sleep. There you go.
You are. Thank you.
When people talk about their psychic kids, maybe they have a child who talks to thin air and he laughs for no reason. And I'm like, well, that is a thing, When you're that age, there's something about the channel of imagination not being gated off, not being told and educated that that's just your imagination and you have to focus on, your homework. You have to focus on real life. And once you say that's just your imagination, I don't know, a kid wants to become an adult, wants to become a grown-up, Something happens around the age of 7, 7.5, maybe 8, where a child's personality starts to really take root. And you become much more engaged in the physical world. And although there might still be a monster in the closet at 7 or 8 years old, you start to understand that maybe that's just your imagination.
And he leaves and he goes in his room, and at this point he's 4 years old. So he's talking a little bit more, and he comes running in with this grin on his face from ear to ear with a book in his hand. It's a book we had bought his sister years prior when her grandmother had passed to help her understand what happens when people die. And it was not on the shelf with his books. And I said, where'd you find this book? Mimi gave it to me. I said, what? And he said, Mimi gave it to me. And I said, what do you mean? And he pulled me by my hand into his room and he said, Mimi was here. And Mimi handed me the book. He's 4 years old.
So my sister and I and my dad are living in this little house, and my grandmom kind of moved in and is looking after us, and she's spoiling me by, if I don't want that kind of dinner and I'm cranky, she'll make me a milkshake for dinner. So that's the kind of childhood I had. I was very a mama's boy, but my mama was my grandmama. Anyway, the things that happened there is my dad went through tough times, anger issues and feeling, I guess, victimized by this burden being placed with these kids, and the mom, runs out on him. It wasn't easy for him, and there was some time there where he had some mental issues and had to go to an outpatient group just to work through some stuff, But the thing is, even once he started dating again, I think it caused some friction between him and his mother, my grandmother, about, his roles as a father. And he's trying to, get out there and have a good time and mingle and date, but there's these two kids at home, So that was my childhood. And there was one point there where he had lost a job and wasn't doing too good financially. And my sister and I actually moved in with my mother down in Delaware. She was in the Air Force at the time and was stationed in Dover. So we went to go stay with her for a year. Changing schools when you're that young is weird, man. People that are military families that get restationed and the kids have to be uprooted, they'll talk about that. There's military kids and changing schools and how that affects your personality. It's weird, man. We stayed there with her for a year, and by the time I came back home, the other kids in the class, they all remembered me. I didn't remember any of them. I didn't remember any of them from 7 to 8 years old. They were like, you don't remember? I'm like, it's such a weird thing, man. So weird. That time we spent with my mom was difficult because, I loved my Legos. She'd be like, you got to clean up your Legos, clean them up. And I'm like, but this spaceship takes more than one day to build. Come on, I got to leave them out because there's these little wing parts and I haven't even put it together yet. Man, I hated that. I really disliked my mom. She was strict, military strict. The kids needed to go outside and play, and that was tough, man. That was tough, especially coming from how my grandmom treated me, and I could do no wrong. It's like that's what spoils a kid. They say, well, yeah, what was that? My choice? How am I to blame for that? I just knew that I just didn't take to my mom very well. I never really formed an emotional bond with her. Here's a funny story. One time, I was 16, I was in Catholic high school at the time, and it was the summer between, I guess, I don't know, sophomore and junior year or something. And we had gone to stay with my mom for a week or a weekend, and I wanted to get my ear pierced, So I thought it was cool, what is it, the left side, the right side? I don't know. I think it was the left side. Is that the good side? That's how you think back then, right? Who gives a shit nowadays? That's so stupid. But anyway, here's how it goes, man. I got the one ear pierced, and she was so upset by this. That's your choice. That's your choice. That's gay. That's gay. All right, I got to have a gay son now. I'm going to have a gay son. This is my mother. I get home, go to set the table, right? She goes, all right, dinner time. It's your turn. Set the table, faggot. That's what my mom said to me. So, just to give you a little idea of the kind of person that she was, why I never really took to her very much.
You had pointed to me and then said, his actual name, and I was like, oh, God, please don't go there. And it was not a good situation. That was like a taboo subject. That was something that, it was crazy. He did a lot of things, set our house on fire. It was worse things than that. And then you literally were acting like him. Like you were talking like him, like standing like him, and just behaving like him. I was like, whoa, what is he doing here? I just was like, totally just shook up. I went home to tell my mom, and she was totally freaked out.
Not to say that my entire childhood was horrible. When you're left on your own, you can find friends, I had a very active imagination. And, playing with Legos from the time I was just a baby, I just really enjoyed it. And I just have a three-dimensional kind of mind where I enjoy really abstract thoughts. And I think some of the stuff that inspired that would have been like the Dr. Seuss books. Man, I loved those Dr. Seuss books. Part of me to this day thinks if I can reach out to other children and inspire their imagination, maybe one day I'll write a children's book because it was so transformative for me. It allowed me to really spend time with my imagination and come up with stories. And I used to get paper and pencils and Scotch tape and scissors, and I would come up with my own pop-up books, and I would draw things. I would write out stories. I used to imagine that there was another dimension in my closet. I used to love that closet. It was a spooky little place, you know. I thought there was a lot going on in there. When I would go to sleep at night, I'd have to have that closet door closed, you know, because the monsters, or whatever, you know, it's like when you're left alone that much, your imagination can run wild, right? Even to this day, when other people reach out to me and they say, I think I saw, you know, my mother in spirit, but I don't know if it was just my imagination. I'm like, well, there's a little bit of overlap there, you know? There was a guy, Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, they called him, early 20th century medium, and he would channel messages. But I love this quote from him that he says, imagination is the channel of the higher self. That resonates, man, because somewhere in that pool of imagination, there's this ability that we have to let go of ego, to let go of our foundation in the physical world and drift within. And then we fantasize, we imagine these different stories about ourselves. We imagine the past, we imagine the future. This imagination is so rich and so deep. I don't think we fully understand the capability of our imagination. It's like I'm imagining the readings when they're happening, you know? I go into a state that's very interior and very disconnected from the physical world, and it's like I'm just imagining it. And how I arrived at all this is just from being left alone so much as a child, spending so much time inside my head with my imagination as like my only friend, with the whole landscape of my thoughts being the thing that replaced going and playing sports, you know? Like my dad didn't really ever throw the ball around with me. I was just left alone, right? I never really learned coordination or how to throw a ball. It was embarrassing to me during, you know, the gym class at school. I was not one of the boys that knew how to do that stuff. It was really awkward for me, you know? I didn't even learn how to ride a bike until I was like 12. The rest of the time was me trying to learn on training wheels myself alone, you know what I mean? So a lot of things I did alone, which you could look at it and be like, oh, God, that's so depressing. But you know what? It kept the foothold to the eternal open for me. Instead of at that age of 7.5 or 8 years old, normal children become very engaged in the physical world, and they can close that door to the imagination, and they lose access to that eternal self as they become identified with personality traits, right? I still had access to go to the place where I was no longer the personality. You know, years later when I went to psychotherapy, I had a counselor telling me, well, who are you really? You know, you don't even sound like you're being your authentic self now. And I go, well, because I'm talking to you, I have to have a personality. But who am I really? I'm nothing. I'm nowhere. When I'm by myself, I unravel. And she's like, no, that just sounds like a convenient escape from talking about your issues. And I'm like, but that is true, though. I feel like I'm not myself when I'm talking to other people, because the real me is the thing that came into this life without personality traits and will continue once I die. That's the real me. All this other stuff you could say is the real me, but it's no more real than a mask. It's no more real than a movie that's playing on a screen. One day I'm going to walk out of the movie theater. So was it real? It's real enough, you know what I mean? But that childhood experience of being alone for so long somehow created this pathway back to the eternal for me. And I think we all have access to that. All you have to do is meditate. All you have to do is, you know, pop in your earbuds and listen to a meditation where you can go inside. You can get to a place where you're no longer really focused on the physical world, and therefore you're not focused on your identity in this world, your personality traits. And once you leave all that behind, you're in touch with the eternal. That's why those in spirit can interact with you through these deeper states of consciousness that you achieve in meditation. That's why those in spirit can visit you in a dream state and produce this vivid experience, visitation dream, because you're not really grasping the wakeful part of your conscious personality. You're going within. That's what happens when we die. We go to this other place of pure awareness, imagination. The energy all connects us together and interacts with each other.
Soon after my grandpa died, I'm the deepest sleeper. I mean, nothing wakes me up, not alarms, not people, nothing. And I sleep through the night no matter what. I mean, I really sleep through the night. And I was laying in bed, and I just was awake I was completely asleep, completely dead asleep, and all of a sudden just awake. And that never happens. And I was like, well, this is really weird. And I knew in my gut and in my heart that my grandpa was in the room. I knew that he was standing at the foot of my bed. And not only did I know that he was there himself, but I know that he was there with someone else introducing me as, you know, as like his grandson. And I asked you the next day, and you said, yep, that's pretty much exactly what it was. Your grandpa just introducing you, and he probably was at your other brothers, you know, your brothers' beds too, and they just didn't notice.
So years later, I'm like, I don't know, 27, 28 years old. And at the time I'm dating this girl, Erin, and her family is super cool. We're all together as a family. You know, sometimes you date somebody, you also date their family. Well, this is one of those relationships, right? Very in with her family. So her mom is into genealogy and works at this historical county library thing. And so she's always looking at, the Henrys, you know, I found an article here. Are you related to E.P. Henry? And I'm like, the construction company guy? I don't think so. She's like, well, I've got these old Henry homes that were built in the early 1900s right there in the town you were from. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool that I heard that. Maybe that's my grandfather. It's like, oh, no, that's E.P. Henry. That's the construction guy. Maybe we have a common ancestor. So Erin's mother was always, you know, rifling through old stuff and finding cool information and running it past me. Well, she's going through this county newspaper at the time and found an article about the development that I grew up in, you know? And she said, hey, didn't your house back up on these woods, you said? I said, yeah. She goes, well, somebody else's house that backed up on the woods has got a crazy story. So I get the article and I read it. And here it is. It's the same development. It's that same patch of woods. And a mother was having a difficult time with her young son. He was having these nightmares and this crazy visions of a past life. And he would talk about his other family. And it got to the point, this woman, she doesn't believe in any of that stuff. And she's just trying to ignore it. But it just got really intense, like freakishly intense. He had their names. It was like, well, what's your mother's name? Rebecca. Oh, okay. What's your father's name? Sylvester. Oh, that's great, you know? And she's thinking she's going to get him with this one. Well, what kind of toys do you have in your other life? And he says, well, I only had a little red wagon that I would pull around and collect things and put them in the wagon, and that was my only toy. And she thinks, man, that's weird. How's he not saying G.I. Joes or Transformers? It's very strange for a child that age to even come up with that, right? But why the article ran in the county newspaper is because they did some research on that wooded area. Turns out, I guess in the 1950s when they built this development, it was all farmland, and there was a little family plot of a cemetery there on the farmland where they had buried people, and that's the way it was, you know, back, I don't know, 1700s, 1800s. The thing is, doing some digging on the historical records, the names of the people buried there on that family plot were Sylvester and Rebecca. And you can't read them on that grave marker. It is wore off. Right. That's newsworthy. So I read this that Erin's mom had showed me, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like the woods that my house backed up on. And here's this other kid having freaky nightmares. I'm like, yo, did I ever tell you about what happened to me? Like, I was terrified of that back window, you know? Weird coincidence. But it doesn't stop there. A couple years later, I'm working at a Blockbuster Video, right? Now, it's a busy area. This Blockbuster's got a large crowd. It's a populated area. So Saturday night, it's a busy video rental night, and I'm a manager at the time, so I don't usually work the register. There's like a whole staff that works the register, and I'm just kind of there to solve the problems and sit back. Well, I jumped on register because the lines were long on this Saturday night. And a lady walks up and, I can help you right here. And, hey, do you have your Blockbuster membership card? And she goes, oh, no, I don't. So the standard protocol here is to just ask for your driver's license, right? You don't want to rent out a movie to just anybody that gives you their name. So you have to prove it's them. So you just ask for the driver's license and you go to type in the name and pull up their account. So she gives me her license. It's the same address that I grew up at. I'm like, what? Dude, you live in the house that I grew up in. She's like, really? I'm like, wait a second. Hold up. I was like, we moved out at this date. She's like, oh, that's when I bought the house. I'm like, oh my God. The story here is my dad got swindled, according to him, by the IRS. You could say swindled. He didn't pay his taxes, folks. He didn't pay his taxes for years, and they ended up repossessing the house, right? But he thought he would get them. So before they could get at him, he sold the house to a realtor, and under the kind of handshake agreement that the realtor would continue to rent to him month to month to month. Well, 2 months in, the realtor says, I'm selling the house. And he's like, that rat bastard realtor. I'm like, well, this wouldn't happen if you paid your taxes, bro. Anyway, so he was so pissed at this dirty realtor, I'm going to get them. So he had me and my sister just destroy the house, man. Crayons all over the wall. We just tore it up, So I'm telling this lady at the Blockbuster video, I'm like, yeah, my dad had us draw all over the wall. She goes, that was you. I'm like, yeah. She goes, took so long to clean. I'm like, no kidding. So I go, hey, I had recently just read this crazy article in the county newspaper about, those backwoods and how they're haunted. And she's like, yeah, I know the article. It was me. That's my son. I'm like, wait. Hold on. The article's, this is you? That she happened to get in my line, that I never ring register at the Blockbuster, that she didn't have her card. And I had to look up, none of this conversation would even happen. So I get to talking to her and I'm like, oh my God. I'm a psychic medium and this, that, and the other. And she's clearly not comfortable talking about this. And I'm like, well, what exactly happened? What happened? She goes, well, as I close off my register, I'm like, we're closed. Go to the other line. She starts telling me about how they're cleaning the house when they bought it. And the stories begin there. It was always creepy from the moment they bought the house. And she says that middle bedroom. And I go, that's my bedroom. She goes, yeah, that's my son's bedroom. I'm like, oh man, this story's getting friggin' weird. She said, we were cleaning and we went into the middle bedroom closet and there was an ant infestation. I mean, thousands of ants. She's like, they were all over the carpet. The carpet was black with ants all up the walls and baseboards. It was everywhere. So we're trying to crunch them and clean them. And I'm like, she said, I sent my brother-in-law out to go get some cleaning supplies. And I said, why don't you pick up some Raid while you're out? Because we just moved on to another room to clean it, right? So she says, this is how it gets weird. By the time he came back with the Raid, we finally go back into the room, open up the closet. There's no ants. They never returned. I'm like, ooh, that's weird. That happens to be the same closet that I thought was another dimension. So the whole thing is crazy. She goes on to tell me about how they ended up hiring a priest. He came out and performed this ritual, like an exorcism, to cleanse and clear the house. And from then on, it had stopped with her son. So again, I mean, you could say this is all coincidence. I happened to become, as an adult, a full-time psychic medium. The situations and experiences that I've had later in life, if you look back now, were there people in spirit coming into that window and I knew about it? Somehow as a child, I felt it and was freaked out. We moved out of there when I was 12 years old. We moved to another house, which I'll talk about in the next episode. And then this new family moved in, and within days, the little boy who was in my bedroom started having the experiences. Were the spirits confusing him for me? This whole thing gets a little creepy pretty quick. All right, that wraps up the first episode of Ripple Road. Thanks for listening. For more information on upcoming episodes, check out rippleroadpod.com. That's rippleroadpod.com. Thanks for sharing this journey with me. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the big move to the Paulsboro house. That's when all the spooky stuff starts happening. And for more information on me, if you want to check me out, you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Scott Edward Henry. It's Scott with 1 T. Or check out my website at scottedwardhenry.com. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hope to see you again next week.